Hey folks, Pat here from DNS, and this Madison area fishing report is current as of June 21st. Well, a bunch of stuff to talk about, but before we get started, I wanted to let you all know about rufffish.com. I've mentioned this site before. Every year I mention it because every June they do their spring species contest. But rufffish.com is a website dedicated to honoring all fish that swim and folks that fish for them. So they got a cool website to check out. They got life lists. You can record forums for different questions you might have, contests and catches. But every June they do a spring species contest. And so for the whole month, you can enter the contest and you record your catches. Max here, who goes by Fish Nerd, has won this contest a couple times and is currently in second place with 46 different species. I know he and his uncle Roy here, who goes by Low Vision, they're traveling around the south right now trying to catch a bunch of different species we don't have here in Wisconsin. But yeah, Max is right there in the mix. He's close, right behind Fishing Dude for first place. And yeah, I just think it's a cool thing because there's lots of different fish out there, different ways you can fish for them, and yeah, it's just a cool thing to check out. So yeah, give rufffish.com a look there. Otherwise, a little bit of shop news. With the warmer weather we've had, stream temperatures are something to consider when you're out trout fishing. They say that if the water temp is 67 degrees or higher, you shouldn't fish for trout because they can get stressed out and even die just from being caught. So it's a good idea to carry a stream thermometer with you this time of year. We carry two kinds. We got these fish pond ones, $29.95, super handy little unit. You can dip right in the water. It's waterproof and get a good quick stream temp. Otherwise, for many years, I've always used a meat thermometer, digital meat thermometer. I come from a food service background, and I would always borrow those from my work. And yeah, they work great. You can get an instant temperature. And you know what else about these? I had some folks over for Father's Day, and we were cooking some chicken, and I needed a temp. Couldn't find my other thermometer, so I grabbed my one out of my fishing vest, cleaned it off, of course, but worked great for temping meat. So anyway, those are just $10.99, and of course we got the fish pond ones, which are also real nice. But yeah, keep an eye on those temps out there. On the door, as far as announcements, not a lot going on here. There is a benefit for Jim Troya, who had a lung transplant recently, and that's at the American Legion in McFarland on Sunday afternoon. And then there's also a blood drive coming up on July 16th. We got a lot of room on the door here right now, so if you've got a fishing-related event you'd like to promote, or a local event, feel free to swing by, drop off a poster. We're happy to put those up. Well, I guess as far as the report goes, weather-wise, it was hot this last week with temps in the 90s early on, with a bit of a cool down later in the week, but remaining humid. The west side of town got dumped on Wednesday evening. We had flood warnings here in Madison, and I was out of town coming back into town. I didn't really see much rain coming through, but apparently this is a picture here posted by Kenton on Instagram. This is the Wingra Dam completely underwater. So I think what happened was there was like a tiny cell of storms that came through. Must have been because I remember hearing the storm warnings on the radio saying, areas of concern are like Camp Randall Stadium and the zoo and stuff like that. So it must have been just a tiny storm because we got barely any rain here on the north side. So yeah, anyway, that's cool. And thanks to Kenton for posting that pic. But looks like a little rain this evening probably, and a good chance of rain for tomorrow. But then temps for next week are in the low 80s and high 70s, and looks like a little chance of rain here and there, but should be some good temps to get out fishing. The beach water quality thing that the Dane County posts on their public health website looks like quite a few beaches closed. Several looks like on Monona, and a few that are closed for construction. I know Tenney and Spring Harbor are closed for construction. But looks like Monona might be having a little bit of trouble with some blue-green algae. But again, great resource here for checking temps. I checked the tournament schedule for this weekend. There's like one tournament I think tomorrow on Mendota. That's like 25 boats, so it's nothing too big, nothing very noticeable. But good luck to everybody in that tournament. Anyway, as far as the report goes, generally around the chain, fish continue to settle into their summer patterns. Problems is the weeds are also stepping their game up, so shore fishing can be difficult in spots. But that being said, the fishing around town has been good. Sounds like the bluegill are starting to move off beds and out to weed edges further down the chain. So, Kegonsa and Wabisa to a lesser extent. But I did hear about fish on beds on Wabisa on Tuesday. So there's still definitely fish on beds, certainly on Monona. But they're likely coming off here soon. But definitely fish on beds on Mendota. So The spawn this year, it started in mid-May and it's still going here. We're almost at July, so it's been a pretty long spawn this year in Madison. But that's just because of a cool weather or cool water and cool weather. Some of the days might have been a little warm, but the nights have been cool, keeping those water temps down, and that extends the spawn, which I assume is good for bluegill populations. But generally around the chain, you'll still find bluegills up pretty shallow or moving just out to weed edges. It's hard to beat a piece of red worm on a small jig or a spike or a wax worm under a bobber. Tossing flies for them, also super effective, so give that a look. Crappies are generally being found also out a little deeper in that 10 to 15 feet of water on weed edges and near structure, but I've also heard about some suspended at those depths over deeper water as well. Crappie minnow with a minnow-shaped plastic on a bobber is a pretty safe bet for those fish. Bass have been in a good mood around the chain. Largemouth are up shallow for the most part, and lots of things work for those fish. But with all the weeds coming up, weedless rig plastics and swim jigs are good options. But topwater action has also been heating up. Smallmouth can still be found up shallow, but many of those fish are being found on rocky shoreline breaks in 10 to 15 feet of water these days. Catfish action remains good here on the north side, but is winding down a little bit. Crawlers are working well for cats, but leeches are also great producers, and some folks that have been switching over to stink bait have also been getting some good fish. The walleye are moving deeper as the water warms, and I've heard about some fish starting to show up on mid-lake humps, but most of the action I hear about is still on shoreline breaks, sometimes mixed in with those smallies, sometimes coming out of water as deep as 25 feet, but mostly in that 15, 20 foot range. If it's during the day and they're deeper, something like a more subtle presentation like a leech or a fathead on a jig, drop shot, or under a bobber is a good idea. Although folks do get plenty of fish trolling and crawler harnesses when the walleye move up shallow at night to feed jerk baits and swim baits are, of course, good options. Haven't heard a lot about muskies around lately. Hopefully that action improves, but the pike are plentiful around the chain, and they'll grab just about anything. So that's a lot of fun there. Area rivers and streams are coming down nicely, but rains up north and locally have them running a little high again. Or they were coming down nicely, but now they're running a little high again. I guess we'll get into a little more detail up here. On Cherokee is, a weedy mess up there, but I have heard about some decent topwater action. Otherwise, if you've got a small boat or, canoe or kayak or something, you can launch here at the School Road launch, get out in the channel and up and down there, a little more weed-free fishing. And some good action. I've heard about some good bass and pike up there. Down to the 113 bridge here, like I mentioned, cats are still being caught up there, but that action does seem to be slowing. Crawlers have been good. Leeches are good for catfish, and there's also a nice mixed bag of fish. I hear about walleyes in there, bass, smallies, largemouth, white bass in there. So you never really know what you catch. But still, these days the catfish are still the star of the show, and they're up there in good numbers. Also good catfish here in the North Bay on Mendota. They're going to start moving out into the main lake. I've already heard about folks catching them, elsewhere. A lot of folks that are pan fishing are occasionally tying into a big cat. But I guess speaking of panfish, gills are up shallow on beds in a lot of places all around the Mendota. With water warming up, though, I got to believe that that's going to be short-lived. Crappies are being found in better numbers. A lot of big fish, but not a ton of them. But for the last few years, you hardly heard about any crappies at all. So I'm encouraged to hear that there are some crappies out there. And just look for those fish out a little bit deeper, 10, 15 feet of water. Weed edges are good. And if you can find some structure, is a good bet for crappies. Otherwise, smallmouth, like I said in the intro, breaks, rocky breaks, Maple Bluff, Governor's Island, Picnic Point, Second Point, Fox Bluff, University Shoreline to somewhat of a lesser extent, but all good areas to find smallies this time of year. And the walleyes are mixed right in with them. The walleyes haven't moved in great numbers out to mid-lake humps. I do hear about some fish being picked up on places like Brearley, Dunn's, Second Point out here, but most of your fish, from what I hear anyway, are being caught on shoreline breaks. Otherwise, Tenney Park, also a great mixed bag coming out of there at the break wall and below the lock and dam. Although the lock and dam action, isn't as consistent as it has been all spring. But I guess that pretty much does it for Mendota. But down the river here. Oh, also I've been hearing about some nice bass in the Tenney Park Lagoon. As you go down the river, dumps into Monona, always a great spot. Nice mixed bag of fish coming through there all the time. But otherwise on Monona, kind of the same deal, but to a lesser extent from the bluegill side of things. The bluegill are still being found on beds here, but are starting to move off as well. So you can find them up very shallow or out on weed edges, depending on where those gills are in the spawn. Bass are being found largemouth in good numbers up shallow. Smallmouth aren't as common on Monona. Some good walleye action, especially in the evenings, Monona Terrace and John Nolan Drive area, but also, at breaks, so out here by the rock pile on the Monona side of things. And, some guys trolling out there are getting some fish. Good action in Brittingham or Monona Bay and the triangles. Some good, gills in there. There always are. But those, the weeds are starting to get pretty thick in there. Same thing over to Winger. A lot of weeds in there. A lot of good panfish to keep a kid busy. If you got a small person in your life you'd like to keep busy with some small panfish, great spot. But the weeds are coming up. There's a lot of good bass in there, but again, it can be challenging, but that's what weedless lures are for. And the muskies, too, over there have run on the smaller side, but there are some good action in there. Turtle Bay, Weechawak Bay are all holding panfish now. But again, I haven't heard much in the way of muskies on Monona. So, and I know I've talked to a couple of guides and muskie anglers, and it's kind of concerning. But I also sort of feel like June just starts slow for them. Down to south of the lake here at Lottis Park and the Mud Lake area, a lot of good panfish to be had in there. Find a weed line, or in the channel you'll find some fish. Mud Lake, the dredge hole is always a great spot. Some good panfish action in there. But I've heard about some good largemouth bass in the vast flats out here in Upper Mud. Same thing down on Wabisa. Like I said, as recently as Tuesday, I heard about fish still on beds, but that's got to be winding down. But you can find those fish up shallow, but they're going to start moving out to that 10, 15 feet of water and kind of recuperating after the spawn and just kind of hanging out there. And I'll feature this rig Gene showed me years ago, and it's awesome for targeting those fish once they're done spawning. Otherwise, I haven't heard much in the way of muskies. Heard about a few walleyes in the Babcock Bible Camp areas, a couple crappies over there too, kind of near weed lines and stuff. But that's about all I know for Wabisa. Keeganza's been Keeganza. I've heard about some fish up here near Fish Camp. I think I heard one report of some walleyes coming off the state park, but I just don't get a ton of people through the shop that are fishing down there. The Rock River's still running pretty high after some recent rains. I don't know if the flood or the no wake rule is still in effect for Koshkonong, but I had seen that they were catching some fish trolling, I think mostly up near the Black Hawk Island area. Some good action on a mixed bag of fish, some catfish and white bass down near the Indian Ford Dam, and also up at the Jefferson Dam. I guess Beaver Dam, I'm still hearing about some great eater-sized catfish up there, and there's plenty of them. I heard the action up there has been really great, so if you want to go fill the freezer with catfish, that's a great place to do it. Otherwise, over to the river, I haven't heard much out of Devil's Lake lately, but those trout got to be starting to move out deep here, or suspend over deeper water, I would think. Otherwise, the river is running high. I think it was running at 16,000 CFS this morning, which, is higher than normal. It's usually, I think, about maybe 10 or 11,000. So it's a little high, but fish are being caught out there. I was talking with Wyatt Reeves, who guides with Black Earth Angling, just the other day, and they've been having great action. He showed me some pics of some nice fish up and down the river. And, you're going to want to look on backsides, sandbars, corners where the water kind of tucks in there. Anywhere you can find a little bit of deeper water, you're going to find fish. And with the hot temps, for trout coming up, it's a good idea to maybe give trout a break and just go chase smallies on the river. It's great fun. Otherwise, all your dams, Prairie du Sac, Dells, Petenwell, Castle Rock, all are going to have a nice mixed bag of fish this time of year. And same thing on your flowages. So Lake Wisconsin, Castle Rock, Petenwell. Walleyes are starting to move out deeper on near shoreline breaks. A lot of guys like to troll these areas, and they do well. But I've heard about fish coming, out of 5 feet of water, and I've heard about them coming out of 25 feet of water. Panfish are being caught in shallow bays on all these flowages. So yeah, Castle Rock and Petenwell and all that. The Mississippi River is raging right now. I don't know of anybody that's fishing it very successfully. I know this guy Cameron comes into the shop a lot. He's got a tournament over there. He was saying he's been fishing over there, but they're fishing like in the woods, like in trees. Everything's flooded, so you can't even navigate the main channel. So they've been getting some good walleyes and bass in the trees. So that's, I think, kind of cool. But anyway, Milwaukee, the river's also been high over there, but at a fishable level now. So good smallmouth action in the Milwaukee River and some of the other tributaries, and some pike in there. Coho's out in the Big Lake. It sounds like they're starting to move up the coast and getting out a little bit deeper. But the good news is the king salmon are coming in behind those, and they're going to be hanging out the rest of the summer. So if you want to get some exciting fishing action on some huge fish, get over there and check that out. Otherwise, as far as trout go, the water has been high, and so we've dealt with quite a bit of rain. So fishing can be difficult. But if you're fishing some cloudy streams with spinning gear, you're most likely going to be in a good shape with a Rapala countdown, crappie size tube jig, spinner, small spinners and spoons are all great. If you want to run meat, a red worm under a bobber could be the most effective way to catch trout that's ever existed. Otherwise, if the water's cloudy and you're fly fishing, drifting woolly buggers and larger dark colored nymphs in that stained water through the same pools and tailouts will likely produce fish. But if the water's clear enough and you can run, blue-winged olive and mayfly nymphs through there, um, those are always a good option. The blue-winged olive hatches and mayfly hatches in general are becoming a little fewer and farther between right now, but they do come off in the mornings and the evenings. So if you're looking to catch fish on dries that way, um, that would be the time of day to do it. But again, watch those stream temps as things warm up. Otherwise, June is typically, for me anyway, when I kick off my terrestrial fishing. So terrestrials are bugs that live on land but fall into the water, and trout key in on them. And so I'll be going over the next few weeks talking about different terrestrial ideas. Right now, I love throwing ants. So I'm a big fan of this foam ant we carry here. It's a flying ant technically, but it works great and it catches lots of fish. But these other ones too, this one's got a little parachute style with it's nice hackled up in a hot spot. You can see it easy. And these little ants here too are all good options. So yeah, we'll be talking about terrestrials over the next few weeks. But that's it for our Happy Fly Day feature. I guess that's it for the report. I do want to thank you for tuning in. Feel free to call the shop here at 241-4225 if you want us to expand on anything. Otherwise, please post your catches and comments below. Love to hear what's going on out there. And yeah, I guess, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Good luck out there, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks much.